I'm showing you how to make these cute little packing cubes for your suitcase. These are 6 inches by 6 inches and they're 3 inches tall. When I'm packing, I use these for small things like t-shirts, socks, electronics, hats and mittens, and things like that. But they also work really well as a project bag for knitting projects or as a makeup bag or things like that. For this project, you're going to need 4 pieces of fabric that are cut to a 10-inch square. These are from a layer cake, which is a type of pre-cut quilting fabric that comes with the fabric already cut in 10-inch squares. You're also going to need a zipper foot, and wonder tape for attaching the tab to the zipper. You'll need a regular foot, quilting clips or pins, scissors, a rotary cutter, and a mat. The last thing you need is this free printable template that I designed. You can find the link for it in the description below. You need this for cutting out the notch in the fabric so that the bag lines up correctly. For your fabrics, you're going to want to choose 2 pieces that make up the outside of the bag and 2 for the liner. The outside of the bag we're going to align with interfacing so the bag has more structure. You can use any type of fusible interfacing or quilt batting. For my interfacing, I'm actually using non-fusible embroidery stabilizer fabric because this is what I had on hand. If you're using something like this or quilt batting, you're going to want to attach it to the outer fabric with a fabric adhesive like this. Whatever kind of interfacing you're using, you want to attach it now before cutting out the pieces. We're going to start by cutting out the template. The first page is just instructions and it explains how to use the template and line it up on your fabric, but I'm just going to show you that as well. I designed this so that it fits on one piece of printer paper, so it's really just a template for cutting the edge of the fabric. It's not the same size as your fabric square. You're just going to start by cutting it out along the black line. So the template is pretty self-explanatory, but what you're going to do is line up the right side with the right side of the fabric and the left side with the left side. You can pin these to the fabric if you want to hold it in place. So once you have the template pinned to the fabric, you can go ahead and cut out these notches. Once I have those notches cut out, I'm going to take the pattern off. And then I'm going to cut this line here. I like to fold these out of the way and line it up with my mat and use a rotary cutter and a ruler to cut this piece off. If you're doing it this way, just make sure you're not cutting any part of this fold here because you want this fabric intact. Just cut off this flap. And then we're actually going to save these little scraps and use them for a different part of the project. And after cutting from the template, you should have a piece of fabric that looks like this, kind of like an H shape. And then we're going to repeat this process with the other 3 pieces of fabric. So here I have all my fabrics cut out. I have my liner and my outer fabrics that are lined with interfacing, or in my case, this is actually embroidery stabilizer. The last thing you're going to want to do is just mark the top so that you know which side it is, unless you have an obvious print that shows you which side is the top. To do that, you can just line the template up again and make a quick mark at the top. And you want to do this so you know which side to put the zipper on, because this notch is a little bit higher up on one side. And today my assistant Clementine is helping me out again. The next thing we're going to do is cut the zipper to the right length and attach decorative tabs. And for this, I like to use the little scraps of fabric we just cut out from the pieces. So now I have a zipper that's 10 inches long. To make the zipper tabs, I'm using these 2 scraps from the outside of my bag. For the zipper tabs, I'm going to fold them inwards like this and press with an iron. And then we're going to fold this over the raw end of the zipper. So after pressing, I have 2 little pieces of fabric that look like this. These are a little bit wide, but we're going to cut off the excess later. To sew the zipper tab, you're just going to take this piece you just ironed and put it over the end of the zipper. And then you're going to stitch across this as close as you can to the edge. I like using wonder tape to hold this in place, but you can also pin it. So here's my piece of wonder tape, and this is just a double-sided sticky tape that washes away. And here I have my zipper tab, and I'm actually just going to go ahead and trim off this excess fabric right now. And then I'm going to repeat this on the other end of the zipper. Before we move on, you can also sew some little decorative tabs that go on the outside of your bag like this. For that, we're going to use the other pieces of scrap fabric. I like using the liner fabric because it creates a nice contrast with the outside of the bag. And these little tabs are really nice for holding onto when you zip or unzip your bag. To make the tabs extra sturdy, I like to cut a little piece of my interfacing from my project and put it inside of the tab. So that's what these are. And my assistant Clementine is being very helpful today. To make these, you're going to take your scrap fabric and fold it like this. So these edges should be folded down by about 1/4 inch. And then you're going to press. Once you have the edges pressed, you're going to fold it in half again and press this. So once I have these pressed, I'm going to put my interfacing or batting inside this fold here. And then fold down. And once that's in there, we're going to stitch around these 3 edges really nice and close to the edge. So here I have the stitching done on my tabs. And we're going to just set these aside for later. We're now going to switch out for a zipper foot for the next stage of the project. The next step is to sandwich the layers for the first side of the zipper. So we're going to take one of our big outers and make sure the zipper side is up. And then we're going to take the zipper and lay it face down across that upper edge. Then we're going to take a piece of the liner fabric, using the top edge of it, we're going to flip this face down over top of this and pin along the edge. To make it easier to sew with the zipper, I like to start with the zipper partially down. We'll stitch up to that point, stop, re-zip the zipper, and then continue. Stitching close to this zipper pull can be really challenging. Before we start sewing, I just wanted to mention that all of the seams and the top stitching that we do along the zipper edge, you're going to want to stop 1/2 inch from the end of both ends. And that will make it easier to layer these pieces together at a later step when we need to sew the side seams. To sandwich the other side of the zipper, I have my other piece of outer fabric, and this is top up. I'm then going to take this piece that we just sewed and lay it face down along that edge. And then lastly, I'm going to take my other piece of liner fabric, this is the top, and I'm going to lay it face down on top of that. And then we're going to pin along this edge. Keep in mind that, like the other side, you might need to move the zipper when you get to it while sewing. At this stage, your bag should look something like this. And the next step is to press this fabric away from the zipper and do some top stitching along this outer edge. If you have a plastic zipper, just remember to turn the heat down on your iron so you don't melt it. So after doing the top stitching, you actually want to unzip the zipper so that you can turn the bag later on. The next step is to stitch the bottoms of the bag. So we're going to take it and fold it like this, and line up the bottom of the liner and the bottom of the outside fabric. For the liner, we want to leave an opening in the middle so that we can turn the bag later. So for that reason, we're just going to stitch for about 2 inches along both of these sides. So now I have the bottom stitched, and we can go ahead and sew across the outside layer. On the outer layer, you can stitch all the way across this line. After we sew the liner and the outer layer, we can go ahead and press these seams flat. I like to press this flat all the way across so that this opening has a nice fold along it, and that makes it easier to stitch shut at the end. The next step is to stitch the ends of the bag. So you're going to take your bag and fold it like this so that the zipper is in the center. We're going to be stitching this seam here across the end of the bag. I like to start with the liner. You're going to want to pin the outside fabric away from this area so you don't stitch through it. When we sew, we're going to keep this out of the way and stitch across here, including stitching over the zipper tab. For this seam, it's really hard to get close enough when you're using a regular foot, so I like to switch to a zipper foot for this step. here's that seam I just sewed, and you can see it goes all the way across the end of the bag, over that zipper tab, and to the end. And none of this fabric here from the outer fabric is caught in it. And on the other end of the bag, we're going to repeat that exact same process. So here I have both ends of the bag sewn for the liner, and we're going to repeat that on the outer fabric. The only difference when sewing the outer fabric is that you want to remember to put your pull tabs inside the bag before you sew the seam. These tabs are going to be centered exactly over the middle of the zipper, like this. When you stitch through them, they'll be secured in place. So here I've sewn across the first seam of the outer fabric, and we're going to repeat that on the other side. And remember to put your tab in here before you stitch across it. The last major step is to stitch the corners. You're going to have to repeat this process in all 8 corners. To do this, you're going to want to open the corners out like this and stitch across. I find it works easier if you press these out a little bit by hand, or if you're able to get your iron in there, you can do that as well. I find it easier to just press it with my fingers. Once that's nice and flat, you can just line up the corners and put a clip in the middle. And then you're just going to stitch across. If things shifted around a little bit while you're sewing, try to get as close as possible to a 1/4 inch seam allowance on here. This little bit here is just a little bit extra, but I'm not going to worry about that, and I'm still going to just stitch across. After turning the bag, the last step is to stitch this closed in the lining. I like to hand stitch an invisible ladder stitch in here. To do that, you're just going to stick your needle in like this so it comes out through that fold. Then you're going to alternate between sides like this.